There's a form of pain that leaves no blood. It doesn't shout. It leaves behind no visible wound, but it erodes something sacred within you. It's called disrespect. You recognize it when someone talks over you mid-thought, when your contributions are dismissed without a glance, when your generosity is mistaken for fragility. And the most heartbreaking part? You said nothing. Machiavelli would have called that silence a misstep, not because you failed to retaliate, but because your silence served as consent. Disrespect behaves like a weed. The moment you nurture it with your silence, it begins to grow until it becomes part of how you see yourself. This isn't about pride. It's about perception, about how the world treats you, and more critically, how you allow yourself to be treated. Today, we explore the mindset of Machiavellian clarity, how to eliminate disrespect before it unravels your identity. You were raised to be considerate, to speak gently, to offer the benefit of the doubt. And while there's honor in that teaching, it carries risk. Because in a world that only bows to strength, kindness without boundary becomes a currency no one respects. It becomes invisible. You become invisible. This is where Machiavelli's uncompromising wisdom comes into focus. He didn't craft the prince for saints. He wrote it for those betrayed, overlooked, brought to their knees but still seeking understanding. He studied a world where good people were consumed not for lacking morals, but for lacking defense. He once said, "It is much safer to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both." But this wasn't a call to cruelty, it was a call to clarity. Fear, in his framework, wasn't rooted in aggression. It was a matter of drawing lines, of embodying a presence so grounded, so resolute, that people hesitate before they overstep. Fast forward to today, you may not rule lands, but you do rule something far more intimate. Your time, your energy, your space. And like any leader, if you don't protect your domain, others will walk right through it. Think of respect as a mirror. It reflects what you embody. Stand tall. It mirrors authority. Bend too quickly, and it reflects weakness. People follow that reflection. Disrespect rarely shows up loudly. Often, it's casual. A sarcastic jab at your expense. A backhanded compliment. A decision made without your voice in the room. And we dismiss it. We smile to keep the peace. We stay silent, fearing confrontation. Or worse, we wonder if maybe we deserve it. But each time you accept less, you invite others to give you less. Not because they're cruel, but because human instinct exploits soft borders. People test limits, often unconsciously, and if no boundary pushes back, they just keep going. Machiavelli's metaphors, the lion and the fox, were never just about rulers. They were archetypes we're all meant to embody. The fox sees beneath the surface, it catches the trap hidden in charm, the manipulation wrapped in politeness, the fake praise that masks control. The lion doesn't roar to be feared, it simply stands. And that is often enough. It doesn't need to roar at every challenge. It simply holds its ground, and that alone creates impact. In practical terms, this is the mastery of restraint. Not every slight deserves a battle, but every offense deserves awareness. You might not confront it directly, but you adapt. You reduce access. You stop handing pieces of yourself to those who handle them carelessly. You don't demand respect. You distance yourself until respect is the only way they can reach you. True power is rarely loud. It's the kind of calm that unsettles, the stillness that draws attention without effort. When you're anchored in self-awareness, when you decide not to tolerate disrespect, your silence begins to speak volumes. Machiavelli understood the psychology of influence. He knew that people don't respond to your internal thoughts, they respond to the energy you radiate. Confidence, value, presence, these are not spoken. They are lived. And in a world obsessed with being liked, where validation is the new addiction, authentic self-respect is becoming a lost art. But anything rare becomes precious, and precious things are treated with greater care. So how do you shift this paradigm? It begins with redefining what kindness actually means. Real kindness does not tolerate abuse. It involves discernment, choosing wisely who receives your warmth. It's about being generous without being gullible, caring without being easily taken advantage of. Machiavelli would say, your worth becomes undeniable the moment you stop trying to convince others of it. Stop justifying yourself. Stop apologizing for your standards. Stop shrinking to make others comfortable. When your sense of dignity is internalized, you stop chasing recognition, and people start offering it on their own. They become more mindful with their words. They listen with more intent. Because you're no longer asking for validation, you're radiating value. Disrespect cannot survive in the presence of authentic self-regard. That's true mastery. It's not about revenge. It's about evolving beyond the place where disrespect used to land. It's about making your presence a benchmark, a level others must rise to or walk away from. This isn't arrogance, it's alignment. A realignment with the truth that your time holds weight, your voice has substance. Your heart is not open terrain for careless steps. So stop giving people roadmaps to the damage they've caused. Stop giving third chances where even a first was a mistake. Stop mistaking your silence for strength when it's really fear wearing a mask. Instead, remember what Machiavelli grasped long ago. Life is not fair, but it is patterned. And those who read the patterns, who grasp the nuances of behavior and boundary, move through it with accuracy and serenity. It's not about manipulation, it's about wisdom. About knowing when to speak, when to walk away, and when to close the door. Not out of spite, but with elegance. Because the greatest expression of strength isn't revenge, it's withdrawal. And once you begin living from that truth, you'll witness something powerful. The world starts to adjust. Some will rise to meet your newfound standard. Others will fall away. Either way, you're no longer losing. This is how you eliminate disrespect, by embodying the dual nature of the lion and the fox. By becoming someone whose silence echoes louder than others shouting. By remembering the most crucial respect must come from within, from you to you. Now we step into the deeper reflection, into the space where these concepts no longer remain abstract, but begin to shape your lived reality. The question is no longer rhetorical. How does this philosophy breathe in your everyday world? What does it look like in your home, your relationships, your inner dialogue? It's time to go beyond the lesson, past the metaphors of the lion and the fox, and into the practical soul of it all. You've grasped the principle that even the smallest tolerance for disrespect is a silent green light for more. But comprehension alone isn't transformation. Real change only begins when the principle walks off the page and into your choices, into the way you speak, into the way you sit in silence, into the person who stares back at you in the mirror. Because the real challenge doesn't come from theory. It comes from life. What do you do when disrespect shows up in the eyes of someone you love? In the tone of a parent? In the silence of a longtime friend? Walking away from strangers is simple, but it's different when the insult comes with a familiar voice. When the wound has a history. Because part of you still clings to hope, still believes that if you just wait long enough, they'll come around. That if you endure quietly, they'll eventually recognize your value. But that's the lie. That hope is what traps you. Sentimentality, when placed above your own sovereignty, doesn't just weaken kings, it unravels the individual. Machiavelli saw it clearly, and so must you. The harsh truth is this: disrespect isn't always loud. Sometimes it's subtle, a forgotten commitment, a half-hearted response. Being the last call, the first blamed, or simply unseen. And we excuse it. We tell ourselves it wasn't deliberate. But that's not what matters. What matters is the effect. If someone walks over your boundaries, whether they meant to or not, the damage is real. A wound is still a wound, even if the hand that caused it didn't mean to harm. And this is where many fall. They wait too long. They don't react until it's too loud to ignore. But by then, their sense of worth has already been eroded, not in one clean break, but through constant erosion. Subtle, steady, silent. So how do you act sooner? How do you notice before it escalates? You tune into the unspoken. You begin to feel the weight of what lingers between words. You notice the shift in your energy after an interaction. You ask yourself, do I feel lighter after being around them, or heavier? Do I leave more grounded or more fragmented? Because the world rarely disrespects you all at once. It does it gradually. It probes, then waits. It tests the line and watches for your response. If you do nothing, it keeps pushing, not always with malice, but with certainty that you won't stop it. And the moment you begin to honor those subtle signs is the moment you start reclaiming your power. Do you feel lighter when you walk away, or heavier? Do you feel closer to yourself, or further away? Disrespect doesn't usually arrive in explosions. It comes quietly. It nudges the line, watches how you react. And if you say nothing, it pushes further, not necessarily out of cruelty, but because you've taught the world that your limits are mere suggestions, not unshakable truths. But what if you lived another way? What if every line you drew came not from fear, but from deep, unwavering self-regard? What if you addressed disrespect not with anger, but with steadiness? What if you walked away from places not because you weren't wanted, but because you finally refused to stay where your worth had to be begged for? This is where theory transforms into embodiment, where self-respect becomes a daily commitment, not just a feeling. Every time you decide not to justify your limits, you reinforce them. Every time you distance yourself from those who don't honor your words, your spirit takes notice. Every time you stop exchanging your dignity for temporary harmony, you reclaim authorship over your life. Understand this. You're constantly showing the world how to treat you. Every yes, every no, every look away, it's instruction. And more than that, you're showing yourself who you believe you are. Machiavelli understood this deeply, as clearly as any modern thinker. He saw that the mind always finds logic to support what the heart is willing to endure. People remain in places that destroy them slowly because they've constructed meaning around the pain. They tell themselves, this is what love looks like. This is just family. This is loyalty. But is it still loyalty if the cost is your self-worth? When you must make yourself small to remain accepted, ask yourself, is that closeness or captivity? A sacred bond or a prison disguised as tradition? A lion doesn't stay caged. A fox doesn't return to the trap. To reflect honestly means to ask, where am I permitting what should have ended long ago? Who do I allow to speak to me in ways I'd never accept from a stranger? And what part of me is still afraid to walk away? Most of the time, it's not fear of conflict, it's fear of loss. Fear that if you speak your truth, you'll be left behind. That if you choose yourself, they'll stop choosing you. But here's the liberation. Those who vanish when you rise into self-respect were never truly there for you, only for what your silence gave them. Their departure is not abandonment. It's space being cleared. Space for those who meet your depth without punishment, who respect your spine, who see your standards, and don't mistake them for distance. Such people exist, but they only appear once you stop hiding behind ease. Once you become someone who prefers solitude over shrinking, someone who'd rather walk alone than be accompanied by those who dim their light. That right there is the purest strength, the kind that doesn't shout but simply stands. Not loud, not forceful, but a calm that refuses to be disturbed. A self-respect that isn't for display, but a part of who you are. And in that way, Machiavelli's wisdom becomes intimate, not just guidance for leaders and empires, but a mirror for your inner rule. Are you leading with clarity, or letting others dictate the terms of your worth? Are you protecting your crown, or allowing it to fall each time someone offers disapproval? These aren't philosophical riddles. They are the micro-decisions that quietly build or dismantle your sense of self. Each time you allow someone to talk over you, every time you suppress your truth to keep the peace, each smile you force when disrespected, you're handing over bricks from your inner fortress. But here's the power. You can rebuild. In any moment, starting now, with this breath. You can choose that disrespect has no place in your space, not because you think you're above others, but because you've finally recalled your inherent worth. You can be warm and unwavering. You can show compassion without sacrificing clarity. You can be gentle and still immovable. That's the paradox of real power, and the world notices. Even if they don't applaud, they adjust. They adapt, or they fade away. Both are a win. So take a breath and let this truth settle in. Nothing that shrinks your soul deserves your tolerance. You were never here to be decoded by everyone. You are here to live aligned with your dignity. And even in the absence of applause, disrespect dies the moment self-respect takes root. Not because the world taught you that, but because you chose it. Again and again. And now, we reach the final breath of this path, the last mirror, not turned to others, but held toward yourself. Because in the end, the way to eliminate disrespect is not through force or control, but through remembrance. A remembrance of your identity, your power, your place. Let's close with what your spirit already knows. You've passed through silence. You've felt the invisible sting of being dismissed. You've named it disrespect. And now, you stand on the other side of awareness, holding a truth more profound, not a truth given to you, but one unearthed in your quietest moments, the ones with no audience, when it's only you and the echo of your worth. And in that moment, you realize dignity was never something to be earned. It was never a favor others could grant. It was always yours. It was never something others could grant you. It was always your birthright, ancient, sovereign, buried under years of apologizing, layers of hesitation, and the habit of dimming yourself so others could shine. Understand this. Killing disrespect is not about battling the world. It's about ending the internal war between who you truly are and who you've pretended to be for approval. Machiavelli, often misunderstood as a champion of cruelty, was actually a master of clarity. He never asked for heartlessness, he demanded unwavering self-respect. He wanted you to grasp this truth. If you don't demand respect, you'll be ruled by those who do. And it starts in the smallest, quietest moments. Moments that seem trivial but shape your entire path. Moments where you silenced yourself because your voice felt too fragile. When you laughed along even though the joke was at your expense. When you stayed though you knew deep down, your spirit had already left. But now, you're remembering your way back to yourself. To the version of you who doesn't need to yell to be heard but refuses to whisper just to remain accepted. You return by recognizing that self-respect is not ego, it's peace. Not vanity, but alignment. It's making the conscious choice not to chase after people, places, or labels that ask you to shrink in order to feel seen. The death of disrespect begins and ends inside you. It vanishes the moment you decide, I will no longer mistake tolerance for strength. I will not swap silence for safety. I will no longer wear humility as a muzzle. There is a kind of love this world doesn't understand, not dramatic, not loud, but steady, fierce love for yourself. The kind that allows you to leave what wounds you, without bitterness, without scenes, without the need to be justified. Because here's the truth. Their understanding isn't required. Only yours is. The world can misinterpret you. They may call your standards pride, your solitude coldness, your boundaries unkind. Let them. Let them wonder. Let them create stories about your distance. It's irrelevant because you hold the truth. You are not harsh. You are simply clear. And that clarity, that's your rebellion. That's how you preserve your inner kingdom. Machiavelli once said a leader must know how not to be good when goodness becomes a threat to survival, which means sometimes survival requires you to defy the rules. Peace may require letting go. Dignity might demand the strength to stop seeking approval and start commanding respect. And real respect? It's never earned through perfection. It's claimed through presence. By walking into a space with quiet certainty, not waiting for permission. By looking someone in the eye and saying no without flinching. By letting people leave and refusing to chase the ones who only love the version of you that was easy to use. This is how you eliminate disrespect, not by tearing others down, but by elevating yourself. By becoming the kind of person who consistently chooses their own worth without apology. Not because you believe you're above anyone, but because you finally realize that no one else gets to define your value. Not your history, not their judgments, not their silence. This is your crown. You don't wear it for recognition. You wear it because it's rightfully yours. Let the world adjust or walk away. Either way, you remain. Grounded, whole, unwavering. And in time, you may find others like you, those who speak with honesty, who move with integrity, who love without control, and respect without conditions. Because when you elevate your standards, your life becomes a filter. The noise fades away. What matters stays. Let this be your quiet act of defiance. No fists, no flames, just presence. Still, solid, unshakable. Let your actions say what your mouth no longer needs to. I will not make space for what harms me. Let your limits reflect your return to self. Let your silence be sacred, not submissive. Let your distance be a higher form of love, a love for the self you refuse to abandon again. And when old tendencies return to justify, to please, to shrink, recall this. There is no valor in making yourself small for those who never saw your full strength in the first place. This is not an outburst. It's a moment of clarity. You're not here to be pleasing. You're here to be powerful, not in the Machiavellian sense of control, but in the truest form of ownership. Ownership of your time, your mind, your spirit. Because once you claim yourself, you become unpurchasable. And what cannot be reduced cannot be disrespected. So move forward now, not louder, but with greater depth. With each step, let go of the urge to be accepted. Replace it with the desire to be real. Choose the stillness that strengthens you, the solitude that restores you, the self-respect that shields you. This is how you defeat disrespect, not with force, not with noise, but daily, quietly. With each limit you enforce, each truth you live, each fragment of yourself you stop abandoning. This isn't the end. It's the start of a life that refuses to settle. Let them wonder why you've changed. Let them feel the loss of who you used to be. Let them sit in the silence left behind when you reclaimed your voice. And above all, may you never forget again. You were never born to be tolerated. You were always meant to be respected.